Hello, everyone. This is Seafood Joel Ledlow, Evolution JKD. I'm joined by Ian
Hello.
as normal. And this is, I believe, episode 11?
10
Episode
or
11, I
11.
think.
Yeah, one of those.
If it's like episode 44, just bear with it. If it's episode 3, there you go. Which episode it is isn't the important part. It's the fact that we're going to talk about stuff. And let's get into it. So, we should probably just hit record when we first get on because we do our normal thing of catching up, and we ultimately always get into something that maybe we text about back and forth throughout the week, and then when we get on a call we start yammering on about it. And one of the things that we were talking about is I just had a really great session with one of my private students, and we went back to some fundamentals, and I was push shuffle, jab cross, and really did a deep dive on working those basic movements so that he could really refine them. But it wasn't just doing a beginner level, because it's not a beginner level. We were going to an advanced level with it and really taking it into something more profound, which is what Ian and I were talking about. That all the beginning stuff, if you're, JKD, your push shuffle and your jab cross are kind of basic beginner level stuff. If you're in a karate or what have you, with a belt system, your white belt techniques, those things you're learning to get to your first level, your yellow belt stuff, those are the most important techniques. Now, it could be a direct technique, or it could be the beginning cultivation of a greater technique that you're going to work into. And that's something else we're going to talk about is cultivation versus application. Most of the time in a martial arts class, you are cultivating, you are not applying. It's like going to the gym when you're building up, cardiovascular and muscular strength, and then you're going to go apply that later in a game when you're playing sports. You can't go like, well, this is going to be, I'm at the gym and I'm doing bench press and this is going to help me with my basketball game because I'm going to do this in a basketball game. It's going to, but not directly. You're not going to throw a bench press on the basketball court and be like, watch me put up some weights here. That's not going to score you any points directly, but it's going to give you more upper body strength, or running on a treadmill, what have you. So, like if you're doing swimming, the beginning parts of understanding how to cup your hand, how to float, how to tread water, those are elements that are going to carry you through, whether you're doing recreational swimming or you're doing competitive swimming to whatever level. You still have to know those things. You still have to start somewhere. In martial arts, you have to start somewhere. And I think our big one is, and then I'm going to let Ian put in his 2 cents or $20, is that when you start with something, that's not the end of it. Like, oh, I learned this is my fighting stance, and then I'm gonna do push shuffle. And I learned a jab, and I learned a cross. Great. Okay, you learn them. Now refine them. You need to go through the process, your yellow belt to your next belt to your next belt, all the way up to black belt, up to second, third. I'm a beginner level, intermediate level, advanced, instructor level, whatever you are. You've been doing it for 6 months, you've been doing it for 6 years, you've been doing it for 30 years. You should be refining it. You should be evolving and growing, because that's the whole nature of it. And if you're trying to do, I'm going to get into a little bit of a pissy match right here before I give it over to Ian. I fucking see all these old ass motherfuckers out there in the JKD world. Guys are old as shit, and they're doing the same beginning level garbage back fist or jab that they did when they were 30 years old, like they're still 30 when they're 75. I'm going to tell you, I'm 51 and I don't have the same twitch as I did when I was 30. So I have to make that adjustment in there. I can do a lot of things that I couldn't do at 30. There's a whole lot of stuff that I could do at 30 that is really a big challenge for me physically to do at 51. It's just the nature of the beast, gang. And if you're going to go like, well, blah, 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 yeah, don't be delusional. You're going to get older. Your body's going to change. It's a fact. You can change and alter those things. But if you're still throwing a freaking jab the same way, or attempting to throw a jab the same way you did 30 years ago when you were first starting out, that's a waste of 30 years in my mind. Like, how can your jab be the same thing? Well, I'm going to tell you, firstly, it's not, because you don't have the same muscles backing it up. You don't have that fast twitch. And I've seen some old guys out there trying to do that punch in there like they were still a young kid and trying to pull off the, yeah, I would do this. And I'm like, dude, that shit's crawling across space. You're telegraphic and you're slow. So if you're going to lose your fast twitch and you're not going to be fast, and I've been really lucky. Ian he's younger than me by several years, and he's got really good fast twitch. And he started when he was like 19, 20 years old. And so I'm still like cocky of like, oh, I'm on my 30s, man. Let's go. Oh shit, you're faster than me. I can't keep up with his fast twitch. If we're doing the same level, it doesn't work. And there's a lot of people out there who are going to have just quicker movements than me. So I had to work on refinement. And that is the whole process, whether you're doing Jeet Kune Do or karate or, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, you have to figure out how to make it more efficient for you, because your wham bam thank you ma'am of I'm going to go out and muscle this stuff, or I'm just going to speed demon it goes away. And at any point in your training anyway, you should always figure there's someone faster or bigger and stronger than you. So learn the beginning movements, refine the beginning movements, but eventually they should evolve. It's like fucking Pokemon. I love that example. It's so great. You start off with one little Pokemon, and then it challenges itself, and then it evolves, and it becomes another Pokemon. And it's slightly different, but it's still the same. The essence, it's just like life. It mirrors our martial journey, but also, I'm still little kid Joel from junior high, high school, college, in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. But I'm also me, and I'm different. I've evolved. I'm a different person, but the core of me is still the same. And the same thing with the Pokemon, same thing with a black belt versus a white belt. The core is still going to be there. You're still you. You're just greater at understanding and expressing something because you've practiced the shit out of it, and you continue to do so. I've been really, really lucky to train with a ton of phenomenal martial artists, and not just Jeet Kune Do, but in a lot of other arts. They're constantly refining. I love to go back and see them again to have a discussion with them, because their insight and their movement, even as they age, changes, and they're able to apply to a much higher level because they're refining themselves. And it really doesn't matter if they're doing sport or combative or whatever. It doesn't make any difference. All the people I've been around, and they're from all of those, they refine movement. All right, I've gone on a tear. Ian, add in where you want to.
So a couple things. That's usually how I say things, right, or start my spiel. On the Pokemon analogy, it's also important to remember that after that Pokemon receives its final evolution, as it gains levels, it still can learn new moves. And then they also have something called technical machines, which I don't know if you've played Pokemon or not, Sifu Joel.
Nope.
But there are technical machines that you can teach it that it normally wouldn't learn, but it has the ability to. So the reason why this is interesting is because you start to see, for one, that I guess this is the same analogy of you can teach an old dog new tricks, but also in the means of sourcing out information and seeing what is the same within these base movements that we're talking about. And what I mean by that is the whole conversation started with understanding that the reason why you practice stuff from the beginning, these jabs, the cross, palm thrust, and all that stuff at a white belt level, is because that's what you are going to see the most of. If you think about somebody grabs you and you drop, well, you do that when you punch harder. You do that when you throw. You do that when you're getting ready to jump, And in regards to why we're practicing in the first place with some of these drills. It's like, no, you might not be using this direct thing as direct application, which I think is some of the frustration that Sifu Joel and I express when we see things on YouTube. You know, like somebody talks about using a Paksao and they're like, this is what you're going to do in a fight. It's like, it's not going to happen. But it would be the same analogy that we've used before of why do you dribble two basketballs for a drill? Are you gonna ever, do that in a game? No, there's only one basketball, but it helps build your coordination. It helps build your sensitivity with the ball and the awareness. It would be the same thing of like doing a handstand snap down in gymnastics. You never really do that as part of your routine, but in a round off or a cartwheel or something that requires you to bound, if you're vaulting in gymnastics, then you take that core essence of that skill and you apply it to things that actually do work within the realm of whatever uh, discipline you're practicing. So
So when you're looking at the overall movement or the overall realm of movement that we're talking about, as you're being in a fight, here's things that are going to happen. Well, this is something we want to practice because that one little element, like the handstand snap down, that's one element. And your gymnastics coach is going to go, hey, look, this is really important. We need to get you really strong so that your overall, your hamstrings are going to be really tight so that it goes into the next movement. We do the same thing with all of our movements. I was going to add in one more thing. You had a really cool thing, and I didn't know this, the Pokemon thing with the technical machines. And
mhm.
it instantly made me, the way you described it, made me think, oh, it's just advanced tactics. Maybe my movement isn't different. I have the same move, but I'm learning, and I don't know if this is the Pokemon way it is in that or not, but it made me think of that analogy of it's like tactics. So I have a jab and a cross, and my jab and a cross I've hit the limit. I can't evolve anymore. Well, now I have to then learn how to change the circumstances, the environment to apply those. And that becomes your tactics. And when you get into the higher levels, there's a lot of tactics. So you're not maybe learning how to punch with a jab or hit somebody, or you're learning how to hit somebody,
Mhm.
but you're learning how to manipulate the environment so that your punch at its level can be the most efficient. So instead of trying to change and develop my punch, I'm changing and learning how to manipulate my environment and my opponent to fit into this ideal efficiency of my hit, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I think that's true as well. And something that I was coming from, which is slightly different but still applicable, is for one, in order for you to like the game is brilliant because it teaches you about the game itself, right? Just through these things. It gives you these conditions and these rules about what you can and what you can't do. But the fascinating analogy from this, or the thing that we can take away, is that that's with any skill that you're cultivating in the first place, right? There are, I don't want to say rules, but there are reasons why things work the way that they do. And what is fascinating about it is, if we do the whole Pokemon thing, right? Say, you take something like a Marshtomp, don't worry about it. Marshtomp can learn skills that normally it would be weak to, like Thunder or something. Now, the reason why this comes in and we talk about tactics is that throughout its normal skill set, it would never learn that. But you can use that technical machine to give it an edge, to customize it, to diversify its, its abilities. And when you do that, it's the same thing as why we do cross training and all that other stuff. But in order for us to actually get it, in order for us to be able to figure out how to apply it, we have to see and understand the types. And the types are the most basic thing when it comes into the rules of battling Pokemon, which would be the same thing as learning the rules or learning the base movements within being a white belt. Because you're going to see that
Yeah.
all this stuff interweaves. You
And I
might,
think this goes really into what we talked about in our previous podcast about using video games to help you understand tactics and strategies and kind of help you.
right.
Listen to that podcast. Uh, we that's really, and it's talking about the exact same thing of what I was saying of you learn a movement and then you learn tactics and strategies to better apply those movements. And that's kind of where it is. If you've been doing a jab for fucking 30 years, then you should be able to very quickly just snap it out to go, well, here's three other ways you can use it. I've been in a room with other instructors who have done that very thing. And it's a very casual sharing of stuff. Ian just shared a whole bunch of stuff about Pokemon. That tells me like he knows what he's talking about because he's been there, he's done that, he's played it. Same thing if we're doing when he's talking about doing tricks. Same thing when we're talking about martial arts. Same thing for like music. Same thing for a lot of things where he has expertise because he can come up with it. Same thing. All of you do the exact same thing throughout your day with stuff you're familiar with. And if you really reflect on yourself and think, hey, what am I good at? What's something, whether it's a video game or playing some music or whatever you do for a living, your job, your career, how is it different? You know, you go into a job, day one at your job, you're still doing it on day 10, 10, and you're doing it on, you know, year two, but are you a little bit better at it? I use this example in classes a lot, and everybody goes, oh yeah, because if I start my job, maybe I'm doing the exact same task 2 years later, but I've got a lot of refinement. Found a lot of efficiency. I don't need to do this. I don't do that. But when, as a professional, I'm teaching a new employee how to do the same job, I may take them through all the steps. Here's steps 1 through 10. Well, later 7 and 8, you'll kind of just like merge those, but that takes a little bit. Right now, you really need to focus on making sure you do step 7 and then step 8 before you get to step 9.
Right.
Because it's important to learn the process so that you can do it. That's exactly the same thing we do. So if you've never trained in martial arts, but you have a job that you've been at for more than, I'll say, 10 months, you can relate to the martial journey right now.
So, one of the most profound things that you gave to me, which I don't remember who it was that gave it to you, but you said that, and this is part of what I love about JKD, is that rather than saying, oh, we do a jab this way, we do it whatever, we try to look at whatever base movement we have and say, what is the truth of this movement? And the reason why that stuck with me so hard is because, like I said, we're not just doing a JKD jab. We're not doing a boxing jab. We're doing this. We're saying, how does this work? What are we trying to achieve with this? And what that does is it opens up doors for you to see, not just within your own skill set, but within other arts. If you're doing cross training of, oh crap, if I extend my arm, regardless of if it's horizontal or vertical or whatever, that's a truth, and I can take that and apply that to this other art because it's the foundation, it's the core set. And the reason why we talk about this frustration with what a lot of these other people are doing is that they're not looking at evolving it in that way. They're doing the exact same replica. They're like a museum of what it was like to train back in the 70s and 80s, just doing the same exact thing. And there's no evolution to their movement or like really deep explanation about how they have figured out how to find a different truth from it, or how they have figured out how to apply a palm thrust in means of, oh, here's a quick example. I do a palm thrust in martial arts, but I also play football. Well, that same palm thrust that I learn is also a stiff arm. That is a truth. We don't see that. I don't see that.
No, and I'll also say something else that is, we challenge ourselves. Ian and I challenge ourselves. I remember I was just talking to a class, I don't know, last week or so, and I said, there's always a refinement in your movements. You're always challenging yourself. I remember I was doing some private lessons in fencing for a while, and I had a really great fencing coach, and I would come in, I would do about half an hour of movement, and we would work on the movements, and I was fencing, and then we do half an hour of strategies, tactics, going back through and looking at things. And I remember one time I taught a JKD class, and we were talking about doing trapping, and we're doing Hun Sao, and we're doing the hand is coming through here, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I literally went the next morning, and my fencing coach was giving me all the exact same notes that I had just given to my class about refinement. Like, you need to be working on this. And he was like, well, Joel, you need to be working on this. And I was just like, holy shit, like, this is crazy. But instead of my ego jumping up and saying, well, I'm a JKD expert, I know what the hell I'm talking about, I was like, oh, this is someone with who I acknowledge as having expertise, and he's sharing his insight. It's just like having a personal trainer come in and, yeah, I know how to lift weights, but they're looking from the outside, and they can find those little tweaks to not take you down and be like, hey, you suck, but hey, you've got this, let's elevate you a little bit, let's help you grow a little bit. Where can you do a little bit more? And I talk about this a lot with various movements, and I've worked with a lot of athletes and a lot of individuals over the years who can perform a movement way better than me, but they've come to me for my insight because I do understand movement pretty well. And I was very happy to work with him, and I was very happy to be a part of their journey and go through it. Whether I'm talking to Ian, he's giving me video clips, and then I have to give him 20 questions about what he's trying to do and then go through it. But I also worked with some track and field athletes doing discus and shot put years ago, and it was really cool to watch them take the information and apply it to their world. And like, I mean, they were state champions and national champions. They were devastating to their fields. They're phenomenal athletes, and they did a ton of work. I was just part of that journey.
I think that this brings up a really important point about a couple of things. Like in my opinion, I think that ego should be the smallest of challenges when it comes into applying information to new fields or something of the sort. I find that most of the time it's the translation of taking the same relative movement and applying it to a new context and figuring out what the purpose or what the goal is and why that changes and shifts should be the hardest thing, if anything. But I gotta say, like, there's been a lot of times where I've sent Sifu Joel a video of like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do or whatever, and he gives me some like really way left field information, but whenever I ask these questions, I'm not looking for the right answer. I'm looking for a different perspective than what I have outside of my
Mm-hmm.
own. And then we take that and we explore that. And we talked about this before, Sifu Joel. Like, remember when my friend Ali from Ukraine came, he was like, dude, you got to do your corks and these tricks and stuff completely different. And I
Yep.
said, okay. And it was completely different than what I was used to doing. I gave it like 6 months of trying to apply, and there were some things that worked for me, there were some things that didn't work for me,
Yep.
but it was about the context and about the way of thinking that I gained deeper insight that has changed how I teach corks even now. And so I learned something. It's the same movement. I've been doing corks, like I learned my first cork 10 months into training, so I've been doing it for what, 16 17 years. And what do I still work on whenever I go to the gym? Corks, because they're my favorite trick. But within that, how has it improved? Well, I can tell you I've got a lot of different ways to teach it, a lot of different ways to express it. It's not just one flip. You can make it sideways, you can make it upside down, you can add a kick to it, you can do all these different things. But that's the kind of stuff that we would like to see within the martial world, that at least as far as like, because it's out there, people are doing this stuff, but there's not a lot of that we see on YouTube that unfortunately gets all of the popularity. And I think that's why Sifu Joel and I are so disappointed.
I wanted to add into that. If you go into a quality judo school, you will find whoever one of the top instructors is, and they're going to be really good. And they're going to take one throw, and they're going to do just what Ian talked about with the corks of like, hey, I'm going to do a scarf throw. All right. But I can throw it this way. I can throw it upside down. I can throw it from this direction. I can throw it from over here. It'll look like 50, 100, 300 different throws, but to them, it's one throw. The essence is still the same, but they've manipulated the given circumstances to be able to apply that quote unquote throw anywhere in the field.
Can I
And
interject for a
that's
second?
really, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Like even just taking that, right? A neck throw is a neck throw, right? So what does that mean?
Yep.
That means that you are going to grab somebody by the neck, preferably do a hook arm, and you're going to throw them. Well, what happens if they give you energy that goes right at you? Well, what happens if it turns? What happens if it's
Yep.
completely sideways? It's still a neck throw, but you have to fit it into the context of the energy that somebody is giving you and be able to manipulate it within the bounds of it becoming, or of it having to become something else. Because at some point you can't, fit a circle tube inside of a square hole if it's too big. You know what I mean? So use the right tool for the right job. But in the means of exploring that spectrum about where these skills fit in, that's correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what we're talking about. It's about expressing it in different contexts because not every scenario is going to be the exact same. In fact, it's always going to be different. Every single cork I throw never feels the exact same. It is always a little bit different.
I'm gonna go with two things on this. What Ian was talking about just before of me giving information coming out of left field, and I'm fine with that because I always say, firstly, my first point is I'm giving you information. What you choose to do with it is fine. So if you take that information, you go, hey, I say, Ian, you should do it this way. And he says, okay, I'm going to figure this out. You know what? That's not for me. That's not the way I want to do it, or that doesn't work for me. He's now had an answer that maybe he wasn't exploring before that he was able to explore and then discount, so it's like going out for dinner. Well, do you want to have Mexican or Italian or Chinese or sushi? And you're like, ooh, I don't really want to do sushi, like that sounds terrible, like but you go, well, I don't know, what's sushi? Well, it's raw fish on there. Whoa, why are you not going to do raw fish? That's crazy.
It's a
There's people
consideration.
who do
Yeah.
that. they're
It's
they're crazy. But
yeah.
it's you're looking and considering something instead. Now here's something else. If you have more information and you explore it, you gain a deeper understanding. And then, just like we were talking about with the judo throw, just with the tricks, with a jab, with everything we do, with greater understanding means that you have a greater capacity to adapt to a broader range of variables, which means that you can manipulate and apply in a greater scheme of the world. So it doesn't have to be in an ideal situation like you would find in a learning environment for a white belt. Hey, you need to figure out this. This is ideal. We're on mats. We're going to grab here. My partner's going to work with me. We know what's going to happen. And one, two, thank you. There's your throw. Or, hey, you're going to hold up a focus mitt. I'm going to punch it. That's a pretty easy learning environment. But as you get better, you have to fit into whatever it is. And here's the thing for us. I've recently been very happily engaging with other martial artists in my area who train in other things, and we're all at different levels and do different things and different outlooks on our stuff. But here's the ultimate: we all like it. We all geek out. We all can acknowledge, hey, you have a perspective. You know what? It doesn't matter which of us is better at something because we don't give a shit. We just like doing it and we want to play. It's like having a bunch of musicians. I guarantee you, if you've never done it and you have a bunch of friends who play musical instruments, like we used to do this all the time. I have friends, somebody grabs a guitar and everybody's like, oh, and someone else grabs a guitar and then someone starts, improvising drumming. And then suddenly there's a jam session. If you go hang out with musicians, like musical people, they will improvise a fucking jam session wherever they are. They're just like, you want to jam? It happens. Martial arts the same way. What? You do martial arts? Oh, me too. Let's go. Let's go. What do you do? And then we just want to hang out. I think part of it is, as Ian said, that ego and getting past it, and maybe go back to your childlike glee of, instead of trying to be a fucking expert, just be a fun person going in and having a great time exploring something you're passionate about. That's what I try to do. That's what Ian tries to do. And hopefully, and yes, we get a bit edgy with stuff. That's why we have the Drink Your Tea podcast. But really get back into the joy of learning and exploring without an expectation. The whole, this is going to do this and this is going to do that, fuck off. Like, really, that's not why we're training. You're training because you love training. You love the challenge. You love the exploration. You love the journey with the people you're having that journey with. If you're just trying to like beat somebody up, run them over with your car. Don't run anybody over with your car, please.
I'll say, yeah, don't hurt people. That my final thought on this is that in order for you to be able to embrace this mindset, you have to remember that even beginners can teach you something. And if you put yourself in that environment, Sifu Joel knows what I'm talking about. He's told me so many stories about what do you do if no one's at your skill level? You go back to the beginning. You teach at the beginning. Oh, even for yourself, you're bored. You got your black belt, whatever. What do? You go back to the beginning and you start figuring out how all that white belt stuff applies to everything that is quote unquote advanced.
Yep. Whether I'm working with someone who's my age and my skill level, or working with somebody of a different discipline who is highly skilled, or someone who's maybe a little bit junior to me, or I'm working with a 6 year old who's just starting, I'm going to be learning and I'm going to be growing because they are a person. And when we bow to each other, whatever that bow is, you're giving respect. And if you're really and truly doing that, then you are acknowledging their worth and their portion or their addition to what it is that you're working on. Whether you're in a teacher student relationship or a partner and partner relationship, it doesn't make any difference. If you're doing that bow, you're acknowledging them and you are hopefully then working with them. So when I work with little kids who are just starting out, I have to acknowledge them, and I do. And I've found the enrichment is phenomenal. So I learn from everybody, no matter what age they are and what skill level they are. Hopefully you can too. That's my 2 cents on this one. And yeah, thanks for listening. Hopefully you like and subscribe and check out some other stuff. I do have more things coming out in the very near future. I say this sometimes, but actually I think I might be doing that. And a little bit more technical. If there's topics you would like to hear from us, please drop it in the comments. Let me know, let Ian know, and we can discuss those. If you're like, hey, I want to do this, and it could be positive, it could be controversial, we'll hear you out at least. We may not put it on there, but we'll at least hear you out for sure, and then decide maybe. And if we do, we'll take our skew on it naturally. Anyway, Ian, anything from you? That's too many da 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 das.
Nope. Thanks everybody. Check out our course that we have in the description below and let us know, what your thoughts are, just like Sifu Joel said, and let's have a conversation and grow together.
Yay.
Bye.